Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're going to be talking about digestive system today. So, digestive system, I'm a little facetious with this first slide. It is one big long tube, but it has very distinct areas along the way. The opening obviously is at the mouth, the ending is at the anus, and each phase or area has very specific job. Okay, so we're going to go through each of those different areas. I'm going to give you a general introduction first. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on this slide because I can tell that this is going to be a little bit hard for you to see. Okay, so overview of the digestive system. The different parts, we're going to walk you through all the different parts and the naming of them. That's one of the easiest parts to do with GI system. If you want to take a few minutes, maybe before we start, pause the tape and look at all the different anatomical parts of the GI tract. I think that would be helpful. Okay. GI tract is also known as alimentary canal, and there are accessory digestive organs along that pathway. Okay, the whole system is involved with digestion and absorption. Okay, 30 feet long in a cadaver, but it's shorter in living. If you could remember in the muscle lecture that we just spoke about a week or two ago, we talked about tonicity. Tonicity is that slight contraction in muscles that keep them ready to work. In a human being, the GI tract has tonicity, that slight contraction that keeps the muscle ready to work at any time. That's why in a cadaver, it's 30 feet long, and in a human, it's about 20 feet long, give or take. Okay? Accessory organs help to aid with digestion. An example of an accessory organ is the pancreas. We learned in endocrine last week that the pancreas helps with the regulation of sugar in the blood. The pancreas also has a portion that helps with digestion. It breaks down carbohydrates, which are our carbs that give us energy, lipids, which are our fats, and proteins, which create the structural components of the body, and enzymes and hormones. Digestive process is going to be the process of ingestion, propulsion, absorption, and excretion. Okay, it's just the general process. Okay, basic concepts I'm going to walk you through in the next couple slides. Organs and peritoneum. The organs are the organs that contribute to the GI tract. The peritoneum are going to be those serous membranes. The serous membranes line the body cavity and the organ. They secrete serous fluid. And you remember that when we clap our hands together and we rub our hands together, it creates friction. The serous membranes inside the body cavities secrete serous fluid that create an emolliency between the body wall and the organs, so they are able to slide over each other easily when we move. If we didn't have that serous fluid, there would be friction between those organs and the body wall. I'm going to talk to you about the specific blood supply to all the abdominal organs. Yes, the histology, the cellular component, and the tissue component, and the enteric nervous system. Kind of cool thing about the GI tract is it actually has a set of nerves inside of it that will make it function without any control from the brain. Okay? It's called the brain within the gut. Digestive process. Most of this is self-explanatory. I'm going to kind of zip through it. Ingestion is obviously ingesting food. Propulsion is swallowing and also peristalsis. So swallowing is under voluntary control. The top part of the esophagus, and every time I name an organ that you don't know yet, I want you to pause the tape and look it up in your book. Okay, the esophagus is going to be the tube that connects down to the stomach that is inferior to the pharynx. The esophagus has skeletal muscle as well as smooth muscle. That skeletal muscle will give us the voluntary control over swallowing. Once the smooth muscle takes over, peristalsis happens. Peristalsis is when that smooth muscle moves foodstuffs along through the GI tract in an involuntary manner. Mechanical digestion is obviously chewing, churning in the stomach, moving foodstuffs around. Segmentation in the intestines. There's two different groupings, well, three different groupings of muscles in the intestines. The two ones that are going to actually create movement along the intestines have two different directions or orientations. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. Chemical digestion, enzymes, don't forget, most of the enzymes are going to end in ASE, okay? So a lipase will break down lipids. It's an enzyme that breaks down the fats that we ingest in our diet. Okay, we're going to cover from mouth, the chemical digestion covers between the mouth and the small intestines. Okay. Absorption, the primary site for absorption is going to be the small intestines. Okay, so small intestines is going to be the primary area of absorption. The stomach absorbs some of the things that we eat or ingest, primarily aspirin and alcohol are two substances that are absorbed in the stomach. That's why if you have an alcoholic beverage on an empty stomach, it's absorbed really quickly and it can make you feel buzzed pretty quickly. Okay? Defecation is going to be the elimination of feces. The organs in the peritoneum. Now, just a little review. Okay? The abdominal pelvic cavity has these serous membranes which line it. There are membranes on the body wall. There are membranes on the organ. Okay? So, the peritoneum, guys, is the area below the diaphragm and above the pelvic basin. So the peritoneum is the whole abdominal cavity. The serous membranes that are in that peritoneum or the abdominal cavity line either organs or the body wall. The serous membranes that line on the organs or cover the organs are called visceral. The serous membranes that are on the body wall are called parietal. We went over this in first semester, so if you don't remember this, this should be a review. I would go back and review your notes from A&P 1, okay? So what this does is the organs, where the organs in the body wall touch, they have serous membranes lining them that secrete that serous fluid, which is that very watery fluid, which will decrease friction. It also helps with any infectious agents. Okay, so the serous membranes line organs and body wall to decrease friction. Now, if you hold on just a second. I'm going to zoom back out so you can see me. Okay. So imagine, oops. Okay, there we go. Okay. Imagine that my scarf is the serous membranes. Okay. So the serous membranes are a single layer of squamous cells, actually, on a layer of connective tissue. They form what's called a membrane. Okay, this single layer membrane can lay on top of organs or cover them. So imagine that the top part of my chest is my stomach. On my stomach, I have a layer of serous membranes. Okay? Those serous membranes don't just lay on the front part of the stomach. They go all the way around and connect in the back. So actually, let me do it on my arm. Okay? So they go all the way around. So here's my stomach. The serous membranes form a single layer over that organ, and they connect in the back. And if you can imagine that this connection in the back is attached to the posterior wall of the abdominal cavity, I can't move that organ forward, okay? So these serous membranes not only cover and line the organs and cover and line the body wall, they help to decrease friction, like we talked about. They help to hold these organs in place, okay, these serous membranes. Now, around certain organs, not only do they attach to the posterior wall of the abdominal cavity, these serous membranes actually will envelop the organ in a single layer and connect down to form a double layer. So you can see now I'm holding my scarf together, okay? These areas where they form a double layer is called a mesentery. There's only a few that we're going to talk about. Okay, there's one specific one we're going to talk about coming off the stomach. So stomach, single layer, the serous membranes connect and form a double layer. That's called a mesentery, okay? So mesentery is a double layer of peritoneum. It holds blood vessels, lymphatics. In the stomach, there's a large one in the stomach that holds fat. It gives us part of that truncal obesity when people tend to have that beer belly. A lot of fat gets deposited onto this serous membrane, and we get that truncal or that central obesity. Okay. Now, why is this important? I know you guys are like, I'm so sick of serous membranes. We've talked about it a dozen times. They are important because they create compartments in the abdominal cavity. The compartments are the intraperitoneal, intra meaning inside of. Okay, so intraperitoneal cavity is going to be any organ that is enveloped in these serous membranes in this cavity. Retro means behind, like behind the times. If I look for retro clothes, they're old-fashioned clothes, okay? Retroperitoneal will be the organs that are not enveloped in those serous membranes. They're behind them. So you've got this bubble of organs that are encased in this bubble of serous membranes in the front called intraperitoneal. And then you have organs behind that are called retroperitoneal. So hard, right? Let me make it easy for you. I made up a silly little mnemonic so you know what organs in the abdominal cavity are intraperitoneal or retroperitoneal. And the short list is the one we memorize, right? The short list is retroperitoneal organs. So our retroperitoneal organs are retroperitoneal organs. Silly little mnemonic. The kidneys ascend and descend down the pike. This mnemonic gives you the name of every retroperitoneal organ in the abdominal cavity. Kidneys is obvious, right? So ascend represents ascending colon. Descend, exactly, descending colon. Down, duodenum or duodenum, you may hear it both ways. Pike represents pancreas. Okay. These are all the retroperitoneal organs. Okay. So, what is clinically important, I started to tell you and I got off track. What is clinically important is if you have a patient who comes in and their appendix has burst, that infection or all of that infectious material can spread throughout the entire abdomen. It will stay in the intraperitoneal cavity and cause infection in there. We've segmented those serous membranes, do several things, but one of the things, in addition to what we've learned about already, is it segments the abdominal cavity into different parts. Intraperitoneal is going to be separate from retroperitoneal. If you get an infection, it will stay in its affiliated area, right? So intraperitoneal infections would stay in the front. Retroperitoneal can actually happen in the back, okay? So it's a tough one. Chew on it. If you have any questions, absolutely shoot me an email or let me know. Okay. Okay. Peritonitis is going to be an infection in that peritoneal cavity. That infection will obviously release white blood cells, okay, an inflammatory response. It will also decrease the ability of serous membranes to release the serous fluid. So now if we don't have serous fluid, we will have friction. That patient will have pain in that area because serous fluid is not being secreted. Peritonitis. Blood supply, the splanchnic circulation is the name of the circulation that will feed the GI tract in the abdominal cavity. Okay, so we need to go back and review a little bit. We've got the main artery coming off the heart. That main artery that runs through the center of the body, or I should say to the left of the vertebral column, is going to be the aorta. So I'm going to bring you back into the smartboard. Okay, we're going to do a quick little review here. So off the right ventricle of the heart comes the major blood supply to the body, which will be the aorta. Okay. So we've got the arch of the aorta, and then the descending aorta. We've got the primary muscle of respiration through which the aorta passes. That is the diaphragm. Above the diaphragm is thoracic aorta. Inferior to the diaphragm is abdominal aorta. The abdominal aorta then bifurcates or splits into the common iliacs, okay, and goes down to the legs. Now, actually, I'm going to move this down a little bit. So as the aorta is passing through the abdominal region, we have three branches. Each one of these branches is singular. It's not bilateral as we're used to seeing with the vascularity of the body, okay? We've got the celiac trunk, superior mesenteric, and inferior mesenteric, okay? So celiac trunk is going, this is all right in the notes, okay? So celiac trunk is the most superior. It's singular. It's not bilateral. Comes off the center anterior of the aorta. It splits off to splenic, gastric, and hepatic. So it goes to the spleen, the stomach, the liver. Okay? So celiac trunk has three branches, primary branches, that goes to those organs. Superior mesenteric is number 2. Okay. Superior mesenteric is going to go from the excuse me, duodenum, jejunum, ileum, cecum, ascending colon, half of transverse colon. So an easy way to remember is superior mesenteric goes from duodenum all the way through to transverse colon. Okay, so superior mesenteric is going to be duodenum to transverse colon. And once you have all the parts of the GI tract memorized, you will know all the individual parts that it goes to. But the range is duodenum to transverse colon. Okay. Inferior mesenteric is number 3. Now, inferior mesenteric is going to pick up where superior mesenteric leaves off at the transverse colon, and it goes all the way down to rectum. So transverse colon, splenic flexure, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum. Okay. So inferior mesenteric is going to go from transverse colon all the way to rectum. Okay. This will hit all of the organs that are in the abdominal cavity. Okay, these 3 branches. Okay. The primary purpose of this supply is arterial supply that will send blood to these organs to make them healthy, to bring them nutrients and oxygen, and to carry wastes away. Okay? We need to also talk about the hepatic portal vein. Okay, so we've talked about the arterial supply. This is feeding and nourishing these organs. We're moving on from here. We need to talk about how we get nutrients from the GI tract. I want you to really listen to me for a second. I just had lunch. I had a really great lunch. I had a nice salad. I had some meatballs. I had some pasta. I ingested that food. What do I do with it? I just chew it, poop it out? Nope, got to digest it. Okay, so it goes into my mouth. I swallow voluntarily. Halfway down the esophagus, the smooth muscle takes over, and it's in charge from there. Okay, goes into my stomach. My stomach's going to churn it. It's going to break it down with acidity. It's going to start to use enzymes to break foodstuffs down. It's going to send it into the small intestines. The small intestines at the beginning is going to have more enzymes. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Break foodstuffs down more. And now we have to absorb the nutrients in the small intestines. Small intestine starts to absorb those nutrients. Where does it go? Any ideas? It's eventually going to go to the hepatic portal vein. There are going to be veins which will drain the small intestines. They will send this nutrient-rich blood that we've just pulled all the nutrients out of our foodstuffs and put into the blood supply. It'll send it to the hepatic portal vein, which will go to the liver. The liver is going to be one of the major processors of all these nutrients. It will help to configure amino acids. It helps to restructure fats so they can travel through our bloodstream. It also will store carbohydrates or send them out to the body if we need energy. It'll eat any infectious agents up with macrophages. It will create bile so we can break fats down. Okay, so it's important that we get all that foodstuffs to the hepatic portal vein to the liver so it can process it. Okay, that is called hepatic portal circulation. It is a vein. It is sending blood back to the heart. Okay, it's right in the nose. It's right in the nose there. The hepatic portal vein will send blood back to the heart. Now, this is another interesting step. So we bring all this nutrient-rich blood to the liver. Liver does its thing, processes it. The next step, interestingly enough, running right through the liver. Okay, so if we do the little liver there, I'm sorry, I can't draw. What passes right through the liver is the inferior vena cava. The inferior vena cava is one of the major veins that will drain the lower part of the body. It brings blood back to the heart, which is what a vein is. Okay, inferior vena cava will then go to the right atrium of the heart. Well, how smart is that? We're taking all that nutrient-rich blood, taking my salad, my meatballs, my pasta, pulling what I need out of it, sending it to the liver. The liver will send it to the inferior vena cava up to the heart, and the heart does what? Sends it everywhere in the body. Okay, sends it everywhere in the body. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, hepatic portal circulation will increase after a meal. It will absolutely increase after a meal. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. The different layers. Okay, we're getting into your favorite thing in the world, histology. Okay, the study of the tissues of the GI tract. Now, the histology of the alimentary canal. There's different layers. I want you to think for a minute. If we think of the GI tract as a huge tube, okay, and you think about how it's placed from mouth to anus, the mouth is open to the external environment. So if I take my fingers and I stick them down my throat, am I touching the inside or the outside of the tube? I'm touching the inside of the tube. The inside of the tube is open to the external environment. We bring in foodstuffs. Interestingly enough, we also bring in infectious microorganisms, right? We've got to fight off. And the GI tract is a huge component of our immune system, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, so the inside of that tube is exposed to the external environment, and then we have layers upon layers upon layers outside of that. The innermost layer, and these are right in your notes. Okay, I have you zoomed in on the whiteboard, but if you look at your notes, that first layer is going to be tunica, so you can put a 1 there next to tunica mucosa. Okay, tunica mucosa is going to be the inside of the tube, so this will be the area exposed to the external environment. Okay, tunica mucosa. The next layer, which is below the mucosa, is going to be tunica submucosa. Okay, so even though it's deep, okay, from this opening, and this opening, guys, is actually a lumen. A lumen is the fancy schmancy word, and you can't read that. L-U-M-E-N, lumen. Fancy schmancy word for the opening of a tube. Okay, so lumen. Tunica mucosa lines the lumen. Tunica submucosa is the next layer out. Okay, and it's the sub or the basement of the mucosa. The next layer is going to be made up of 2 layers of muscles, in some cases 3, tunica muscularis. That tunica muscularis will be the layer that helps to propel foodstuffs forward, and it also helps with the churning of food. Okay, so tunica muscularis, and then the outer portion in the majority of the GI tract, oh, that's not working. Go back to this, is going to be tunica serosa. Okay, tunica serosa. So both the tunica mucosa and serosa are going to be aligned with epithelium, different types of epithelium. Okay, they're going to create membranes. The mucous membrane is going to be on the inside, that's exposed to the external environment. We talked about that in AMP1. The serosa is a layer of simple squamous cells that creates a membrane, a serosal membrane, which is going to be exposed to the internal environment of the body. I know it's the outside of the tube, but it's inside the body. Okay? So these are the layers. We need to talk about the specificities of each one. Okay? So tunica mucosa, I'm going to back out here at this point. Okay, so tunica mucosa, the inside of that tube, actually has very specific parts. Okay, very specific parts. On the very inside portion, there's going to be a layer of epithelium, back to epithelium. If you don't remember epithelium, let me give you a brief refresher. Epithelium is going to be closely packed cells. Epithelium lines surfaces of the body. There is a lining on the inside of that tube of either stratified squamous. Stratified squamous, if you don't remember any of this, please look it up because we already went over it. Stratified squamous is multiple cells that have irregular shapes in areas of high friction. We also have a simple columnar. A simple columnar is one layer of column-shaped cells. So in the GI tract, we have one or the other. We either have stratified squamous or we have a simple columnar, okay, along the full length of that tunica mucosa. Underneath the epithelium, so moving out on the circle, is going to be a layer of irregular connective tissue, which helps to hold that epithelium in place. There's a little layer of muscle in there, which we aren't going to get too concerned about, but that little layer of muscle helps a little bit of movement of that epithelial layer. Okay, muscularis mucosa. So we've got, with epithelium, I just want to go back to that because it's a primary concern that I have for that, for this layer. Either stratified squamous or simple columnar. So let me tell you what's where. Okay, in areas of high friction, we will have stratified squamous. So we have stratified squamous along the whole mucosa. Okay, or I'm sorry, we have stratified squamous. We have epithelium along the whole mucosa, but stratified squamous. Stratified squamous will be mouth to stomach. Okay, so anywhere before the stomach, you are going to have a stratified squamous. In the mouth, on the tongue, in the pharynx, and in the esophagus, you have stratified squamous. Areas of high friction. Okay, once you get down to the stomach, you have a little bit of friction because you have churning, but you also have a highly mitotic epithelium in the stomach, so it turns over pretty quickly. Okay, so stratified squamous from the mouth to the stomach, from the stomach all the way down to the anus. So stomach, small intestine, large intestine, sigmoid colon, rectum is all going to be a simple columnar. Okay, so stomach all the way down to rectum. Okay, so this doesn't include stomach, right? Stomach does not have stratified squamous. So you could say mouth all the way through esophagus if that makes you remember a little bit better. Simple columnar will be stomach all the way down to rectum. Rectum has a simple columnar, okay? Then we will have a stratified squamous again at the anus, okay? At the anus, when people defecate, not you, sorry, none of us poop, right? Okay, when people defecate, there's a little more friction upon expulsion of feces, so we need a stratified squamous in that area to help to protect it. So stratified squamous will be in areas of friction, okay? Simple columnar will be in areas where we need more absorption, a little bit of secretion. We have a little bit of mucus that's secreted to help with digestion, okay? And other substances, but that's a good introduction. So tunica mucosa, talking about the epithelium, the connective tissue that holds it down, okay? The next slide, we look at tunica submucosa. Tunica submucosa will be the layer that's underneath the mucosa. It's going to be a dense, irregular connective tissue. It has blood supply, it has lymphatics. It's going to have a lot of lymphatics, actually, a lot of white blood cells to help fight off infections. When you eat, you're always ingesting foreign agents or bacteria, viruses, etc. Your body has a front line of defense right along this tube, okay, the whole length of the small intestines. You have these lymphatics and somewhat also in the large intestine. Okay, these lymphatics and white blood cells are waiting to fight off any bacteria or viruses that you may have ingested, okay? It's called a mucosal associated lymphatic tissue, the MALT system, okay? There's elastic fibers in the stomach, which gives it a little bit of stretch. So we can eat a large meal and then the stomach will shrink back down, okay? So there's elastic fibers in the submucosa in the stomach. Tunica muscularis. Now, tunica muscularis, it's going to be the next layer out. It's a layer of smooth muscle, okay? Layer of smooth muscle. There's a circular component, and what I mean by that is if my fingers represent the smooth muscle cells, in the circular layer, those smooth muscle cells will be as if I put my hands this way around the tube, okay? It'll be as if my hands go this way around the tube with my fingers representing those smooth muscles, okay? And if you can imagine those smooth muscles contracting, it would decrease the lumen or the diameter of that, small intestine, okay? Now what this does, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is it segments the food, okay? It'll push a little bit forward, then it pushes a little bit back, pushes it forward, pushes it back, pushes it forward, pushes it back, and what it's doing is it's churning it. It's churning food, turning it over and over, trying to get as much as it can from it so it can absorb every last little bit of nutrients from that food, okay? So that's the circular layer. The circular layer is on the inside. The longitudinal layer will be outside of that. Once again, if my fingers represent smooth muscle cells and I put my hands around that tube, the smooth muscle cells run this way. And what smooth muscles do in this direction is help to create that peristalsis, that longer pushing of food along the tube so we can push foodstuffs through our intestines and eventually sweep the intestines clean of foodstuffs. Generally, throughout the day, you have 2 to 4, depending on the person, it varies greatly, okay? Large peristaltic movements, which create a bowel movement, okay? Your body will clear out the colon, and that is what instigates the actual impulse, okay, to go to the bathroom and clear out the colon. So tunica muscularis. Oh, one further thing, that circular layer, I almost forgot about, will actually form constrictures, or I shouldn't say constrictures, tighter areas along the GI tract. Those tighter areas are called sphincters, okay? Those tighter areas are called sphincters. The whole purpose in somebody who is not sick is to keep food moving in one direction. So when you eat food, there's a sphincter between the esophagus and the stomach called the gastroesophageal sphincter, and that keeps food from coming back up through our throat. There's a sphincter at the bottom of the stomach. That sphincter will keep food from backtracking into the stomach, okay, et cetera, et cetera. So these sphincters are important to make this a one-way street. okay, to make foodstuffs go through the intestines and come out eventually. Okay, tunica serosa, so now we're on that outer layer. We're actually on the inside of the body now. Okay, tunica serosa. It's called a mesothelium. It's a simple layer of squamous cells on top of a layer of connective tissue. Okay, secretes that serous fluid. There are some cases where there is not a layer of simple squamous cells, it's just a connective tissue. It's called an adventitia. Okay, we're not going to really get into the difference with them because it kind of opens up a whole new bag of worms. But if you know that general concept that there is not a layer of simple squamous cells, so it will not secrete serous fluid, I think that's pretty good, okay, for now. Okay, I'm going to just check the tape. I'm going to stop it and restart it. I'll meet you back here in just a minute.